You've been told you should care about your faith, but you just don't? Prayer feels empty, church feels like a chore, and for a multitude of reasons, you're more engaged in scrolling with your phone than worshiping God. The best word to describe all of this is apathy. This Easter, discover the one love, powerful enough to awaken what you thought was dead forever. By the end of this series, you'll have some tools, a community, and the hope you need to feel alive again.
Christ is risen. Whatever. Let me try this again. Christ is risen. Meh. Okay. Christ is risen. Whoop-de-doo. Oh my gosh. So it's Easter morning. You're here. And you're like not quite sure why you're here. Maybe you're here out of habit. Maybe you're here because, well, your mom called you. Maybe you're here just because it feels wrong to not come to church on Easter. Like you may not even like intellectually believe that, but something like in your soul makes you feel like you gotta be here. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Like, it's Easter. Like, that's a big deal, right? Like, it's the biggest celebration of the Christian church. But you don't feel a lot. Like, this is the hinge of like from BC to AD. This is like death to resurrection. But you're just not feeling it. You feel fine, not bad, okay, not great, just fine. There's something wrong here. Uche Anizar, a contemporary biblical scholar and theologian, writes, I noticed a war raging inside of me. On the one hand, I had a strong desire for learning, truth, knowledge, understanding. And on the other hand, I had started to feel blah about prayer, people, and other things that are supposed to matter to Christians. He calls it double-mindedness, knowledge without zeal, head without heart. While working on this sermon, it was over New Year's Eve, and I was at my parents' house down in Florida, and I was soaking up the sun, and I'm working on the Easter sermon. Like, this is about resurrection, victory over death, the hinge of history from BC to AD. And somehow in the midst of all of this, like working on this Easter sermon, I became obsessed. Obsessed, I tell you, not with the resurrection, but with buying a lap desk. Like, okay, make sure you hear me right. I didn't say lap dance. I said lap desk. You know, like one of those things you put on your lap and you put your computer on it and you type. I spent so much time like researching and looking up. Again, oh my gosh, I am writing the Easter sermon and I am focused on buying a lap dance. Wait, no, not a lap dance. That was Freudian. Lap desk. And here's the Easter irony. The women went to the tomb expecting death, found resurrection, and fled in terror. We, on the other hand, come to church expecting resurrection, find it, and feel nothing. But just for a minute, let's go back to the lap desk. You've probably had an experience like that. It was something that like you knew you weren't really supposed to be focused on or you weren't supposed to be this passionate about, but you really were. So let's take a minute, let's stop and turn to a neighbor or write your answer in the comments. What's something recently that ignited a wildly disproportionate amount of passion in you? Let's talk about it. Most of us don't have a hard time coming up with answers to that question because we've all experienced like a disconnect between what's really important and what we're passionate about or what our feelings are at. Uche Anizar is a contemporary biblical scholar and theologian, and he wrote a book called Overcoming Apathy. The series that we're starting today with the same title, Overcoming Apathy, is based on. He says, This book, or in our case, this series, is for those who want to be passionate about the things of God, but can't seem to care enough. Or as Paul, the first missionary of the church, wrote in his letter to the Romans, don't hesitate to be enthusiastic. Be on fire in the Spirit as you serve the Lord. But it's not just that we lack a little bit of passion, like that we're just a little bit distracted at Easter. It goes a lot deeper than that. The ancient monks called it acedia, or the noonday demon. Evagrius, a 4th century monk who spent his life in prayer and scripture, wrote more about this demon than any other vice. He describes it in this way. It is a hatred of industriousness, a battle against stillness, laziness in prayer, untimely drowsiness, revolving sleep, the oppressiveness of solitude, hatred of one's cell, an opponent of perseverance, a muzzling of meditation, ignorance of the scriptures, a partaker in sorrow. Now, when you read something like that from a monk like Evagrius, there's a way that you like, oh my gosh, I am just a total slacker. But here's what you got to remember about the monks. The monks are like the Olympians of spirituality. They're like trying to take spirituality to a level that most of us are not going to take it. They chose this. They chose a life of solitude and prayer and silence and reading, and they hated it. So does that sound like your spiritual life? If so, you're not alone. Like the monks and the nuns, like the church mothers and fathers, they felt the same way. It's not just a little distractedness. It's like a deep rot in our souls. It's like a lack of, it's apathy. It's a no passion for the things that ought to rightly stir our passions. It's preferring numbness over being alive. And you might call this, sin. I mean, sin, the word gets a bad rap these days. It's been so mistreated. One of my new favorite definitions of sin comes from, actually not really a theologian, but a creative writer, British creative writer and professor, Francis Spufford. He says that sin is the human propensity to f things up. Sin is a sickness that spreads. It's a slavery that holds us in bondage and requires release. It's a crime that builds debt and needs forgiveness. The problem is that your soul is dead. The women at the tomb came looking and expecting an empty tomb. They brought spices, they brought burial clothes, and what they found instead was resurrection. Mary Magdalene sees the empty tomb and she thinks, they have taken my Lord. Even when Jesus appears, she mistakes him for the gardener, saying, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him. She's standing in front of the resurrected Jesus, and she still expects death. Mark's gospel, or Mark's telling of Jesus' life, tells it even more starkly. The women show up, they encounter an empty tomb, and an angel tells them that he is resurrected. He has risen. He is not here. And their response? Mark says they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. That's where Mark's gospel ends. Like literally. That's the end of the book. That's the end of the earliest story of Jesus' resurrection. It ends with like terror and fear and silence and fleeing, because resurrection can be scary. It means coming back to life. It means looking the numbness in the face and finding something new. Resurrection demands response. And sometimes we'd rather stay dead. One of the things that we're known for as a church is adopting churches that are struggling. So we've adopted 2 churches, Potterville United Methodist Church and Asbury United Methodist Church. But those are the brave ones, I'm telling you, because we've had conversations with many other churches that, Well, I had heard about this sort of response going to and attending conferences, but I had never sat across the table from it. That I have literally had people tell me, we would rather close as a church than make the changes that you will bring. They would rather their church close and die than to be resurrected with something new. This reminds me of addiction. When somebody's addicted to something, like you become familiar with the dead thing in you. And part of what is hard of moving out of addiction is letting go of that, letting go of the numbness and finding that new thing. All right, this doesn't have to be like deep addictions, like drug addictions or alcohol addictions or whatever. It can just be simply like what our priorities are. I remember very distinctly on Christmas Eve this last year. In fact, if I'm really honest, not just this last year, but many years. In fact, maybe every Christmas season, it's Christmas. Like this is, again, one of the biggest celebrations. But I have this tradition of like the couple days before Christmas going and buying a really good bottle of wine and really good cheese and crackers and charcuterie. And I will be standing up in front of you on Christmas Eve preaching about the birth of Jesus. But while the words are coming out of my mouth, my mind and my heart and my spirit are looking forward to that wine and cheese at home. In fact, right now it's Easter, and I have a tradition of not just doing like an Easter ham, but I get steak or ribs. And while I'm here preaching to you about the resurrection, back in the back of my body and my soul is like thinking about those ribs when I get home and that steak and what I'm gonna cook. And gee whiz, Christ is risen. Whoop-de-doo. Nothing says resurrection like the dead flesh of a pig versus the living flesh of Jesus. Did I just make that comparison? I think I did. Okay, let's stop for a minute. Let's let you catch your breath after that ridiculous statement. Here's a question for you. When have you felt like your life was just going through the motions? I mean, that could be your spiritual life, your relational life, your vocational life. Let's talk about it. So what do? Do we try harder? Do we feel guilty? Do we fake it till we make it? No. Here's the surprise. The cure isn't in you. It's in the God who raises the dead. Let me say that again. The cure isn't in you. It's in the God who raises the dead. Look at the story again and notice who's doing the work. The women don't raise the dead. They come expecting finding a corpse. Mary doesn't recognize Jesus. She doesn't recognize him until he says her name, Mary. The disciples don't believe the women when they come tell them that Jesus is raised, but Jesus appears to them anyway. Nobody generates resurrection, they receive it. Nobody makes resurrection happen. It's something that they receive with open hands and they grasp hold of the thing that has been given to them. Paul, the first missionary of the church, says that ancient Israel had a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. What Paul is talking about here is his own people. Like, remember, Paul is Jewish, okay? So Paul has come to experience Jesus as the Messiah, the resurrected Messiah, the power of God in the flesh. And it hurts him deep into his core that his fellow religious leaders, his fellow Jewish leaders, at times Jewish people that he speaks to, have not also had this same experience. And so when he says that they have zeal without knowledge, he's describing a sort of knowledge or experience that they're missing that he has had as a fellow Jew. Now, you can sometimes maybe think about this as like passion without guardrails. And let's be clear, like real zeal Real passion is not about destruction. It's not about death. Real zeal is about resurrection. It's about life. At a certain point, Jesus and his closest friends, his disciples, come across an ethnic minority in the area that doesn't accept his teaching. And Jesus' disciples get all worked up. They get passionate. They get zealous. They're like, hey, these people are like dissing our best friend, our teacher. Jesus, do you want us to call fire down, lightning down from heaven on them and wipe them out? And Jesus says, no, I didn't come for death. I came to bring life. Real zeal brings life. Now, if according to Paul, the ancient Israelites had passion, zeal without knowledge, we have the exact opposite problem. We have knowledge without zeal, truth without passion, head without heart. And the solution isn't to manufacture zeal, it's to encounter the God who is already zealous for us. God is zealous. God is passionate. God is moving. God is not dead. God is alive and wooing you to God's very self. Your apathy is a sickness, but God is the healer. Your apathy is bondage, but God is freedom. Your apathy is debt, but God is a forgiver and merciful. And here is the Easter aha. God didn't wait for you to care enough. God raised Jesus from the dead while you were still numb. But God shows God's very own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still dead, while we were still indifferent, while we were still apathetic, Easter happens to you, not because of you. The women didn't earn resurrection, they received it. Mary didn't manufacture recognition, Jesus spoke her name. The disciples didn't generate faith, Jesus breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. Resurrection is something that happens to you. The dead soul encountering the resurrected Christ becomes alive. Now, here's the point of this whole message. This is like me holding my last ace up my sleeve and laying it on the table. So if you take any one thing from this message, take this one thing. The point is, you don't overcome apathy by trying harder to care. You overcome it by being cared for deeply. You don't overcome apathy by trying harder. You overcome apathy by being cared for deeply. In other words, you know that you know that you know. Deep, deep, deep down in the deepest part of your being, you know that you are a beloved child of God. And there is nothing that you can do to change that. I want to tell you about a story where this kind of knowledge of being a beloved child of God came up inside of me and out of me in a time when I was, well, let's just say I didn't believe any of this Christian stuff anymore. See, I grew up in a very conservative home, in a very, I would say, even fundamentalist home, an evangelical home. I went to an evangelical school, a very well-respected evangelical school. And while I was there, I had a crisis of faith, and I let go of all of this stuff that I had grown up with, all of this stuff that I believed. And I faced my own uncertain life without a sort of safety net underneath me. Now, in the midst of this deep, kind of meaningless, dark time in my life, I went home for a summer. And one of my high school friends, his name was, well, let's call him Ray. Ray came over to my house one day, and he said he had something he wanted to tell me. And so we hung out in the cul-de-sac in front of my house, and Ray, while he was leaning on the hood of his car, came out to me. He told me that he was gay, and he wanted to know what I had thought. Now, remember, I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. I hung out with the holy rollers at school. I led prayer meetings, praying for revival to fall down on our school. And we would get up early in the morning and we would pray for these things. And in that setting, I was not at a place where we affirmed or I affirmed that being gay was good, that it was part of the beautiful diversity of God's creation. And yet, when Ray asked me what I thought about him being gay, the thing that came up out of my soul was something very different. What I told him was, I don't really know what to think about your sexual orientation, but what I'm really interested in are the eternal things. Your relationship with God. Now, I didn't have the words at the time to say what I'm really interested in or passionate about is whether you know that you know that you know that you are a beloved child of God. But that's how I think about it now. But what was really surprising was that came up out of me at a time when I didn't think I believed any of it. It wasn't something that I manufactured the certainty to say that. It came from deep inside of a well inside of me of God's love and spirit overflowing through this uncertain heart into the life of my friend Ray. That was one of the first steps for me back to believing in spite of my uncertainty. It was also one of the earliest steps I took towards being someone who could affirm the goodness and the beauty in LGBTQ folks, in my gay friends, my gay family. And for that I say, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.